Awareness and affinity is not built on one interaction. So it doesn't matter. We can't measure what was the thing that worked. The goal is not the moment in time that we were able to change behavior. We're not doing that. We're building a relationship. We're building awareness and affinity, and that happens over a series of time. It doesn't matter which of the influencer posts or channel or moment it was that did the thing, because it's not a moment in time. It's a relationship that builds. I'm Margaret Kelsey.
And I'm Devin Bramhill.
And this is Don't Say Content.
And shout out to our producers at Share Your Genius. They're great at creating shows with strategic outcomes in mind. They've been with us since the podcast was just an idea, and they helped us bring it to life from strategy all the way to execution. And we absolutely love partnering with them.
So if you, dear listeners, are thinking of launching a podcast, which you definitely should, by the way, we recommend having a conversation with our favorite people over at Share Your Genius. Now let's get into it.
So today, Margaret, I actually know what we're talking about today, first of all.
I am so proud of you. Is it because you had an extra 2 days?
I think so. I've delayed our recording every week for the past 3 weeks.
That's all right. That's the name of the game right now, is that you and I both have flexible schedules, and so we can be flexy.
So this is a Redux episode. And this week we're going back to quality. So what does quality marketing mean?
I thought it was, is your content strategy outdated?
Yes. That's what it is. I meant to say, is your marketing strategy outdated? But it goes back. I think this was the quality. Oh, no, it isn't. That's the next week.
Oh, God, we got to keep that in. This is incredible. This is incredible. I was watching you be so confident, being like, this is what we're talking about today. And I'm like, no, it's not.
I had notes. And you want to know something else? Remember the thing I said we need to talk about in the intro?
Yeah.
I didn't talk about it.
We're doing great. You know, in our outro where we're like, you're doing great. Well, some of you are doing great.
I'm not one of them.
We're not that today. Well, Devin, tell us, really, what are we talking about today?
Today is a statement of fact for probably most of you, which is your content strategy is outdated. We've talked about this before. This is intentional redux because every time we talk about certain topics, we find that there's a lot more to unpack. So we've intentionally started bringing them back so we can talk about them from a deeper angle. We're talking about this in a few specific contexts. One is relating to content strategy, because I think there's a lot that's changed in content strategy in the past several years, and there's a lot of buzz about it related to AI, firing of teams, SEO versus content, and that weird divide that still occurs there. And then this rise that we're seeing of the internal influencer, which is something Ashley and I talked about at both Inbound and Marketing Profs last year, which is that people within your company are influencers too, and they're under leveraged and way more effective. And I think it goes back to this idea of like the 5% of people who are ready to buy right now. You need now more than ever to get those folks, because there is so much saturation across other platforms, like other marketing mediums that used to work, and they're less effective now. And so taking what you have at the ready to really go hard on that 5%, and then have that long tail of like how you're going to nurture that 95% to get them to the 5% mode. Like that's kind of where you're operating at. And you have people already at your company who can help you do that and who would want to. So that's kind of where we're going to focus today, is like content marketing is broken. It's kind of turned a little bit icky, hasn't it? Like the way people talk about it, they're like, oh, it's just such a bizarre experience to hear people talk about content now. It's hard to put my finger on what exactly I mean by that, but it doesn't feel nice anymore.
No, I agree. And I think I've said before, but like the reason I was always drawn to content marketing is it felt on the spectrum more altruistic than some of the other highly conversion focused pieces of marketing, right? It's like, we're going to inform, we're going to educate, we're going to nurture, we're going to build relationships. Like we're going to play the long game with content. And I think people still don't really know where to put it because there is very conversion focused content that you can do. But I feel like our own understanding of what content marketing is and encompasses has changed over the last 10 years. And we kind of don't know whether it is or should be focused on, to your point, the 5% that really should buy right now that's very highly conversion focused, or this like altruistic nurturing, building enough education around everything that surrounds the problem that your product solves to really help versus kind of these thinly veiled sales pitches. There's so much of it where I think the people that first started doing it, let's say 10 years ago, obviously content marketing's been around for more than that, but the people that started, like, let's say a decade ago, really focusing on building exceptional blog publications for their businesses, which is kind of what content marketing was 10 years ago. I do think that there was this understanding of let's build highly quality filled content that actually helps. And then it worked. So more people do it, right? And when more people do it, there's just lots more people that do it with different value systems and different whatever. And I think that that's what we're feeling right now is like everyone's creating content. And so there's no like almost professional ethos of what this is.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And there's so many layers to that too. Like if you go right before that decade ago, that was a reaction to the common keyword stuffing days. And so you had this period of like, okay, content marketing has this renaissance when these new technologies and social media platforms and et cetera, Google search gets better. And so you're sort of this push towards, okay, let's not be nefarious, let's be helpful. And Neil Patel or like Seth Godin wrote a book that was like, you can do this in 5 minutes. And everybody was like, okay. So, you have that sort of shift over to what we'll call quality content for this conversation, because that's what we thought of it as. And then once these technologies continue to get better and better, leaders, investors, all those people catch on to like, oh, wow, we can automate this. We can turn this into a cash machine of new customers by making it sort of like creating that journey, that funnel, whatever, and using technology to automate it to some degree. And that's a funny thing about AI is like people don't realize how much we've been automating already over years. And then you get to now where it's like sometimes I'm culturing people not to build libraries of content because I don't think it's the right move, because what they're trying to achieve, either it won't do it, period, or it won't do it because it'll take so long that it's like there's no reason. Like there's so many other strategies they could deploy. We're at this hairy place where search fundamentally is changing. It's more than just AI. AI is creating a greater change. It's affecting content as a strategy, but I don't think it has to be bad.
Like the moral judgment of like bad, good, like it's happening. So like there will be good bits of it and bad bits of it, but it is, right? When we're talking about content strategy, right? The thing that I really think it's useful to parse out is that SEO and search is just a distribution channel. And there are specific things you have to do in order for it to be a useful, helpful distribution channel. But it is no different than I'm going to create content and I'm going to distribute it on LinkedIn versus I'm going to create content, I'm going to put it on the blog, and I'm going to make sure it's optimized so that it can be visible on search. I think we've really started to create this messy blurring of content marketing and SEO as a strategy. Like, I don't even think SEO is a strategy. I think it's literally a distribution channel. You're choosing it as a distribution channel, but like that's the only strategic part about SEO is that you're choosing to distribute your content through search because you have both a conviction that you are able to win in that distribution channel and you can break through the noise, and that your target audience, that's actually how they look for solutions and how they buy and how they figure out whether or not this is the right solution for them or get nurtured in that way, right? Like if nobody's going to be searching for your solution, also don't use SEO as your strategy. If everyone just talks amongst themselves about the products that are on the market, then search might not be for you. But I think those are the two things. Like SEO is only useful if you know that your target audience searches online for solutions to their problem and that you are able to break through the noise of the other keywords and win at that search. Those are the only two reasons you should be building SEO focused content.
Well, but that applies to all of them. The whole shoulds around brands being on social, it's becoming more common knowledge to more people that search is very much a controlled substance, and it's controlled by people and algorithms that people create, and those are fallible. And this is where I think the rise of the influencer, not the influencer as we think of it, like the big $1 million, but like human beings as influencers of each other. I think this gets to where that's sort of naturally happening, where people are asking each other for advice more. And what's funny is then you see Google react to that by showcasing more responses. Like Quora is another one. I don't even think people like I think it's like I think it died. Like I think Quora is gone. Like I think it shut down and like I'm still getting it's turned into a total spam platform anyway, but like yeah, the influence is sort of ping-ponging back and forth, but the point being that there's a new channel and that channel is invisible. I think I'm not going to use this term. I'm just going to say it out loud because someone is quietly saying it right now or they're screaming it at their headphones. It's dark social, but I'm never going to use that term because it's so stupid. And it's the dumbest phrase. It's like, I can't even. I don't know why anyone cares about this.
Okay, I'm going to zoom like way, way, way up. I think what most marketers get wrong is that they forget that if you index on figuring out how people actually do something, how they actually educate themselves, how they actually like to get recommendations, how they actually buy, you will be above all of the algorithms changes. If you understand human beings, because to your point, Google is just trying to make a better product for human beings to find the information that they need. So if you understand how human beings like to find information, it's the same thing with like when a decade ago we were switching to this high quality content blog articles, it was the idea that like that will be beneficial for SEO. If we actually create useful, beneficial content for our target audience, the long arc of the algorithm is going to be that this is actually good for search because we're doing the right thing for the human being. I think anytime that you're trying to game the algorithm, you get these like short-term blips. But even there's that post that went viral on Twitter of the guy that created a crap ton of AI generated content for his blog and he won in the short term and then Google found out and fucking turned it off.
Yeah. I mean, that's an extreme example too. So I get what you're saying now. Well, you're talking about going back to first principles, and that I totally agree with, which is if you go back to first principles, you're going to know your customer like you know your best friend, and you're going to be able to grow and adapt with them as their world changes, thus their behavior. That makes total sense to me. The problem with it, which I think goes back to the core problem that we talk about, we basically circle around in every single episode, is that it ends up being short-sighted because the act of changing and adapting at the pace of your customer is actually hard to do because you're going through it with them. So you have to kind of predict, but you can't act so far ahead that they're not there yet. And so I think it's like, yes, that's true, but I don't know how useful it is because day to day, when you're trying to execute a marketing program that achieves whatever the objective is you're tasked with achieving, you're going to hit bumps. You're never going to be able to outgame that.
Yeah. And my thing is, like, I don't think that you should never try to game any algorithms ever. Like, a piece of this is understanding what is LinkedIn prioritizing right now in terms of the posts that it gives reach, and how can I make sure that it still serves my target audience, but in a way that gets more eyeballs. That is marketing, right? I'm not saying don't do that, but your goal is not to only focus on how to game the algorithm. And I think people get stuck there where they're like, I'm going to game this algorithm. I'm going to game this algorithm. I'm going to game this algorithm rather than, is this the intersection of understanding how the algorithm works and also creating something that's actually valuable to my target audience? And it's so funny to say it, but people miss that all the time. I talk to marketers all the time that they're like, oh, well, you know, I did this thing and it got this thing. And I'm like, well, but that's a piece of shit content for your audience. So like, why would you get more eyeballs on that thing? Right.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that whenever you try to automate anything, it's going to work for a while, but inevitably it will become outdated. The promise of like those marketing automation tools from years ago and the promises of Google ads and Facebook ads, like you were able to automate and make a lot of money and with less human intervention. But saturation happened, and now it's harder to get you can't get necessarily the same ROI as you used to for the amount of money you're spending. For me, what's more exciting about now, but also is what's making it hard to implement, is that you really can't measure the type of marketing that's really working, right? Or a type of marketing that has absolutely been done before in history, that's back again and is working for many companies, but isn't getting any support to scale because it is so unmeasurable. I mean, I was talking to a company the other day about partnerships for this podcast, and they were like, listen, honestly, like that awareness stuff doesn't do anything for us. Our biggest problem is that we just can't measure it. And it's like at the end of the day, they're reporting up to someone who wants to see results. And if they can't tie any results, and I was like, yeah, I get it. That makes sense to me. And my brain goes to, what else could we do?
Yeah. But okay. So where my brain goes is it's so short-sighted to measure awareness on conversions, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to say the awareness stuff does nothing to me because I don't understand the conversion of it. And that's going back to like the thing that I've said probably way too many times, but I'll continue to say it because I think everyone needs to hear it. Marketing is essentially two functions. The first is saturating channels that your target audience lives in frequently, consistently with a message that resonates, right? We're building awareness and affinity by the volume and saturation of the message. And the second piece is, can we identify signals of readiness, and can we get that person to do the thing that we want them to do, to get into the product, to talk to sales, to download the white paper, to whatever, the conversion focus piece. Anyone that's saying this of like the awareness stuff doesn't do anything to me because I can't measure it on conversion is missing that first piece where you have to measure it differently. You measure it in terms of what are the channels that our target audience is in, and what frequency and consistency are we showing up in those channels. And so it's not, are we getting leads from that awareness piece, but the whole mechanism is we need to show up consistently and frequently in those channels again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you just said, like 100%.
When I hear that, I'm just like, you're not investing in a half of the marketing program.
Well, yes. I feel like there was a lot more, like starting during our little renaissance time 10 years ago, like there was a lot more of that affinity. There are a series of actions and reactions. So the action back then was an index on awareness style marketing. We were measuring how much reach a post got, how many likes, etc. Email, same thing, open rate, what used to be really important, and website traffic, all of that. And then the reaction to that is like this extreme measurement where they're like, I want to know where every dime of my marketing is showing results. And to be fair, the company I was talking to, they weren't looking for conversion metrics. They just said awareness in general because they can't measure awareness in general. And I think it's especially difficult to measure with influencers, even internally, because they're going to be across several channels and they're going to be doing different things, sometimes simultaneously. And so, how do you decide which thing works? And I say that again, like I'm sort of playing intentional devil's advocate here because I know the answer, but I also know why it's hard.
It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't have to matter because, okay, so in a conversion focused measurement, you want to know what the thing was because there is a thing. There is an identification of a signal of readiness, and then there's a prompt, and you have to know what the signal was and the prompt was because it's a moment in time. Awareness and affinity is not built on one interaction. So it doesn't matter. We can't measure what was the thing that worked. The goal is not the moment in time that we were able to change behavior. We're not doing that. We're building a relationship. We're building awareness and affinity, and that happens over a series of time. And so you measure it over a series of time. How often are we showing up? How consistently are we showing up? We're not trying to prompt action yet. We're trying to make it cheaper and less cognitively dissonance for somebody to do the action when the action time comes because they know who we are, because they trust us, because they like us. We don't get to like, oh, I had that one interaction with that person and now they like me. They like me because we've had enough consistent interactions that they trust me and like me. And so that's the measurement that's wrong, is that it doesn't fucking matter. Sorry, pardon my French. It doesn't matter which of the influencer posts or channel or moment it was that did the thing, because it's not a moment in time. It's a relationship that builds.
Yes.
I am fired up.
I love it so much. I'm just sitting here like eating popcorn.
I only had 1 cup of coffee, so that's how you know that this is true passion and not just like chemical passion.
Yeah. I've seen you on Too Much Coffee before, and it's
No, this is real.
lovely. Well, look, I know I'm
You've also
playing
seen me on Only Olives and Too Many Drinks, so
we saw each other that way, and it was
oh,
wonderful,
the
and
night
no
we'd
one
forget
else gets
about.
to know about that. Yeah, no one else gets to know about that. Um, the
Moral of the story,
problem
eat more toasts, less olives.
how much time are you gonna spend trying to delay me totally slaying you at your argument?
You can't slay me. That argument was airtight. You cannot even. You can't even.
You can't even. That's a good comeback. We should really add that to the roster.
No, mic drop. I win.
I win. Well, look, to be fair, it is a yes and because everything you're saying is correct. Like consumer ad campaigns, when they go in and put a billboard or like a sign in Times Square, or they launch some kind of subway campaign in a town or a city, they're measuring brand awareness prior to and post campaign, right? And that's kind of gives them a signal to say whether or not it quote unquote worked.
Yeah, like Dunkin' Donuts did not think that with that Dunkin' Donuts Super Bowl commercial that somebody was gonna leave their house and go get a Dunkin' Donuts during the Super Bowl.
Hold on, let me finish. Because, like, at some point, and I hate to bring it back to, like, the boring old businessy, like, budget stuff, but at the end of the day, at some point, you have to narrow it down to stuff that works and stuff that doesn't work. You can't just spray and pray across the entire country or across the entire world. You have to make choices based on your budget of what you can and cannot do, which means there has to be some way for you to parse, okay, I'm working with these 3 industry influencers in these many capacities, right? They're going to speak at a conference, they're going to do a webinar, they're going to do all these things, right? And we're going to also do, I don't know, a subway campaign. I'm making it up. They need at some point to know if either of them are working, period, or if one of them's working more than the other so that they can be more efficient, they can be smarter with their budget, thus continue to get more and more budget. And so, like, at the end of the day, it's irrational to think that you can just like do a bunch of stuff and be like, it's for awareness and then call it a day.
No, but the trick is instead of measuring what works in terms of awareness, what you're doing is you're deeply understanding your target audience and the channels in which they already inhabit. The subway campaign might be very smart if your core target audience uses the subway. You should know that before you do a subway campaign.
Sure, but that's like we're talking beyond that anyway, right?
What I'm saying is what you're always trying to find is the intersection of the channels that your target audience already lives in and the cost to saturate that channel frequently and consistently. And you're looking at those things. I don't think that there is is it working metric after the fact. I have high confidence that my target audience is in this channel. And this is the cost for saturating that channel frequently and consistently. And I've tested enough that this message is one that resonates to understand and have high confidence that I am using the right message. But the work of awareness and affinity is all ahead of the actual program. And then the measurement of conversion is all after the program. But you have to have high confidence that you're spending the money in the channel that is least costly and has the most volume or percentage of your target audience. And then you put a message that resonates frequently and consistently in there. And I think that is the goal. Like you could do the brand awareness survey of before we did the subway activation and afterwards. But in a startup scenario, you're not going to do that, right? Like if you have a limited budget, you're not going to spend the time on like a brand awareness survey. I would tell you not to do that. So you have to have the confidence that it's the right channel and you're choosing it because it is highly cost effective to saturate that channel frequently and consistently because the percentage of your audience that lives in that channel is high.
That's my point. Is like there has to be a way for you to see like there's going to be multiple channels that hit those metrics?
I would say the goal is to have enough of the cost effective channels. So you're hitting people in multiple channels, omni channel, blah, blah, blah. But like you should have multiple of those. And you should never think like, oh, I'm going to cut the one. Because again, it's not about which is the channel that they saw the ad and then they go do the action. That's the conversion piece. If we're truly building awareness and affinity, it is about the volume and reputation. It's this idea that like repetition doesn't ruin the prayer. The more you say something, the more frequently you show up, the more you're embedded in people's brain and the easier it is for them to take the action once they have the trigger to take the action. So it's not about which channel is working more because it's about the volume of times that they see your brand.
Sure. But that is a very like rose-colored glasses viewpoint because at the end of the day, you have to make decisions. And at some point, you're going to have to decide between all those things because you just can't saturate everywhere. And so how do you choose which things are going to work? The first is the hypothesis, right? You're like, okay, if we're a startup, we did some basic math. If we're a big company, we did market research. And we determined that, with some level of data that there's a ton of the people that we want to reach take the subway every day. And they also spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And they also, like, you're going to have this list of places that are expensive and could be equally as impactful in the brand awareness.
So I'd say it doesn't matter. I would say try to do as many as you can with the budget you have. So you're probably picking least costly, high percentage of target audiences.
What if it's a false positive or false negative where you just didn't invest in as much? Because by taking a customer only approach to this, if you say I'm going to try to go and saturate several channels, not all, but I'm going to take a few. But the fact of the way LinkedIn ads work is you have to spend a minimum amount of money to see any results, but you're trying to spread it out. You're going to put something on LinkedIn. It's not going to perform, obviously. You're going to do this thing over here that maybe only did marginally well, but it did better than LinkedIn because you did LinkedIn wrong. Then you're going to think this thing really works. I am totally tearing this to like little bitty shreds just to be right. And I hate myself for it. And I also love myself for it. I should have been a lawyer. Ultimately, I agree with you. Like, I think it is very important. If you're going for brand awareness, you got to go for saturation and you got to get creative. You got to use people within your company to do it. You want to find partnerships with other brands and other external influencers. You've got to pay some money for advertising.
You cannot get as crystal clear with the ROI as you can with conversion focused metrics.
But I think it's good for marketers to try because had I had an answer for that company where I was like, hey, I can tell you with some sort of tangible reality what this will do, like that closes the deal. It may be an exercise in futility, but they didn't even ask for a specific one. Basically, the question they're asking me is like, how do we know that working with you is going to serve our objectives? And that's a reasonable question to be asking someone who's going to them trying to form a partnership in which some sort of benefit value will be exchanged.
And my very clear answer is if you are not focused or you don't have the internal cultural understanding that awareness and affinity is built over the amount of repetitions over time, and that we can show you who our listener base is. And if that aligns to your target audience, we are a great way to have additional touch points with your target audience and saturate this channel with a message that resonates for them. If that is not the cultural understanding, I can't give you the data point that there will be any conversions that come out of this. So this isn't a great partnership, right?
Also, there's sort of two different things too, if you think about it. Like brand awareness is really just a straight investment. The value exchange is like you're paying LinkedIn for ads or you're paying for space in a train or. So I think brand awareness by and large is sort of like one of those costs. It's a cost leader.
Yeah, it can be highly ineffective. It can be really loosey-goosey. And so that's why, like, in these two pieces of marketing, we can have really thoughtful discussions of what percentage of the marketing budget we're going to put into the two of these things. We might want to put 90% of marketing budget in conversion and only 10% in this like brand awareness affinity bucket. That's fine, right?
No, it's not fine according to you because 10% wouldn't be enough to saturate the channels where your
Depends
customers
on
are.
how much of a budget we have.
Okay, but 10% is still, well, yes, but like you're over indexing on companies that have a choice. And I think that a lot more companies don't, especially right now, because everybody's talking about lean marketing teams, even at big companies. They're even like torturing developers now, apparently, which I think is wonderful.
I've had this argument and conversation so many times that it just feels like unless you can get comfortable with the fact that you're not going to know conversion metrics on your awareness and affinity programs, which is the fucking point, I can't work with you. Like, I can't work with you if you don't agree with that. Like, I can't do it. I'm at that point now where I'm like, either we agree that these are the two pieces of marketing and we have to invest in both of them. We can discuss how much we're investing in both of them, but these are two different things and we measure them differently because they're different functions. They're just different. And unless we can get there, like, I can't work with you. And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to beat my head against the table to get you to understand this? No. Like, if you don't subscribe to that idea that marketing needs to do both, then good riddance. Go spend your money on conversion focused activities. That cost is going to go up over time if you're not ever focusing on brand and awareness.
I have a present for you. I do. It's true. And it's a legit. I'm not just saying it. I agree with you.
Shut off her mic. Shut off her mic. We're good. We're done.
First principles, I totally agree with you. I think there's some complications in there, but yes, I do. I agree with you. I think you're right. I think we've talked about this many times before, and it is scary to put money out there in the void and not feel like you know exactly what's going to happen. But that's exactly why you should do it, right? It's like if you don't shoot your shot, you get nothing. Like you will get as much from the things that you know work as they already offer, right? But the X factor, the thing that you're trying with some research behind it, like that is what has that X potential.
You have to have high confidence that your target audience actually is in that channel. You have to have high confidence that you understand the message that resonates with your target audience. And then you just go spend the money. Then you go spend the money because you're like knowing that you're in the right place with the right message and people are going to see it. The other thing that I think, and then we will wrap this up, this goes back to some other podcast episode we had about this idea of like the CFO becoming more of a important stakeholder for marketing to align to. The CFOs at the C-suite, it's usually a head of marketing that's maybe not a CMO. It's like some vague something other than a head of marketing or like other than a CMO that has to be in a meeting with the CFO. And the CFO is asking for these unreasonable metrics about marketing programs. They're asking for conversion focused metrics across the entire funnel. And there's not enough of a strategic leader to say, no, we don't measure these things on those metrics. I can give you those metrics for this piece of the marketing budget, but this piece of the marketing budget goes towards this other program, and how we measure it is a bit based on, are we showing up consistently in the channels and that our target audiences and blah, blah, blah. And this is the problem, is we've defaulted to building marketing into spreadsheets that CFOs can understand without ever pushing back on that's the wrong way to look at it.
I had to do that once, actually. I had to remake a spreadsheet like 10 times for the CEO. And I was like, I'm using data, but I'm like just changing it in ways to like give them what they want. I'm like, then creating a story about like why it works. So I think that was a great wrap up. It brings it back out. And I think it's like, this is probably the best episode we've ever recorded.
I got so spicy.
I am always trying to get you worked up and it never works. So this is the greatest day of my life.
End the episode with just that you agree with me.
Why do you need my approval, Margaret?
God, I need everyone else's approval. No, I approve myself. That's fine. I approve of my own opinions in this.
I agree with your first principles.
So, okay, I don't want you to parse through it. If you're not going to say what I want you to say, then just shh.
Margaret wants to be right in this episode, and so I am going to let it lie there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. If you want to see Devin and I's facial expressions when we're very vehemently arguing in this episode, we do have a YouTube channel where you can not only listen to us, but see our faces interact with the podcast.
And we're going to do a bonus episode soon on YouTube with Ashley Foss. So we're going to move the rads over there and do a guest rad over here at Don't Say Content. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. So we're going to start doing more stuff there because people really liked the live episode we did.
Yeah. So go look at us on YouTube and
Substack. It's really just Substack. It's like wherever you listen, and YouTube will have some special stuff. And Substack is where we have this new newsletter that hopefully by now you've read and liked.
We're trying to hit you up across multiple channels so that you build awareness and affinity with our personal brands. So if you could please access us in multiple channels so we can show up in your life in multiple ways, we would really appreciate it.
And tell people publicly that you love us. That would be great.
But also text me. You don't have to text Devin, but text me and then share publicly. Otherwise, if you text Devin, she'll just ream you out for saying nice things to her. Okay. I think this is going to be a good one.
It is going to be a good one. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, y'all, that's a wrap. Thank you, as always, for listening.
We'll be back next week. And just remember, you're doing great. You're doing great.
30% of you are doing great. The rest, you got to get your shit together. Come on.
You know which side you're on this week.
You know.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You have to do it like several times a week.
Oh,
same with your skin. You should be exfoliating like 2 to 3 times a week in the winter.
Why can't you access my video? Yes, you can. Get out of here, Riverside.
Actual recording. I know we can't knock them anymore because I like.
Love you, Riverside.